Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Digitally, where today we pick up the topic of leadership in the age of generative AI. Now, Gen AI, we all know, is no longer a distant possibility. It's here, it's now, it's transforming processes as we speak, industries, and ecosystems. And what all of that means is that the workforce of tomorrow will actually be very different from the one we see today. In fact, NVIDIA's CEO has recently said that in 2 years, they'll go from having 36,000 employees of today to 50,000 employees of tomorrow and 100 million agents. So you can see that workforce of tomorrow will look very different than what you see today. And so in this new world where AI is everywhere and where the pace of change today is unlike anything we've seen before, we know that this pace is the slowest it'll ever be. And so two questions arise as it relates to you and I. Number one, in a world where you have to run really hard just to stay in the same place, how do we shape our careers to thrive in that world? And number two, as you and I think about the work we do every single day in our careers, how do we lead in driving the change that is necessary for all of this to come to be? And so they're the two pressing questions I want to explore today. And our guest today is perfect for this. I find him constantly at the intersection of three vectors, and I love it. And I don't mind the words, but kind of the nerd, which is mathematics, computer science, artificial intelligence. He's quite a bit of the transformer because he works very closely with leadership in coaching and cultural change for corporations. And then he's an entrepreneur, which of course I love because he's a builder and he gets his hands dirty. In fact, he started his first AI startup back in 2015. So he's sort of been on the building side of things. So when I first met with him, he said something to me that I still remember. And he said, look, it's all about IQ, which of course we know, EQ, which I've come to learn and now invest time and get close to, and SQ. And I said, Nick, what's SQ? And he said, it's about spiritual quotient. And how do you get the spiritual intelligence to lead through the age of AI that is to come? So Nick is the author of The Threshold, which is leading in the age of AI. He's a senior research associate at the Intellectual Forum at Jesus College, the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And like many of us, a successful entrepreneur. And so with all of that said, so welcome, Nick Chatrath.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
Awesome. Well, Nick, look, you've said something else to me that stuck in my mind. And you said, the world is full of three sets of people: bloomers, doomers, and boomers. I want you to spend a few minutes explaining what that means.
Yeah, certainly. And I should add as well with the SQ, spiritual quotient, that's not a religious thing. It's about sort of meaning and purpose that's very deep for us all, humans, in different ways. And that connects to the first one of the three you mentioned, the bloomers. So these are three different views on what might happen to humanity and AI. So the bloomers are optimistic. They say, this is a disruption. We've had disruptions before, and AI adoption will follow that similar type of path like we've seen, for example, in the Industrial Revolution. There will be winners and losers, but ultimately unprecedented human flourishing will be unlocked. Then you've got the gloomers, and that's the robots are going to take all our jobs position. And you mentioned the NVIDIA CEO and with the talk about agentic AI, and will that mean jobs will go as opposed to raising number of jobs there from 36,000 to 50,000. So the gloomers have the robots going to take all our jobs position. And if you think that sounds gloomy, then it's positively very happy outcome compared to the doomers, because this is the wipeout scenario where AI runs amok, ruins the world. You would have seen the films like Terminator, Blade Runner, and whatnot, where essentially our species is at risk. So these are three different views I've encountered again and again. And as you said earlier, I think the leadership we show right now is key. I think as human beings, the world is having an AI moment, and we are at a key shaping moment now. We can, if we do things right, we can lead in a way that our grandchildren and that generation will thank us for. Yeah. So I'm a cautious bloomer. That's probably obvious how I speak.
That's exactly what we want you to be. So let's do this. And by the way, that was a fantastic framework. And I love the ad you did on the spiritual quotient because it is not about just spirituality. It's actually about rethinking how you approach the leadership in the age of AI. Um, as I think about this and as I think about the bloomers, um, and I look at the change that is to come, how should we think about putting together a framework, an approach, a methodology in training ourselves, in cultivating our own skill sets, in getting set up for leadership in this new age?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sanjay. And underlying it is this question of will human leaders be needed? And the AI agents that are slowly coming online are nowhere near good enough yet to replace human leaders. But will that word yet be removed in the coming years? So will human leaders be needed? And if so, in what way? So a lot of the old leadership stories, yeah,
And Nick,
please.
I might just add, it's will human leaders be needed? And then I would add in the roles that we currently have ourselves in, which then actually also bifurcates into what are the new roles and what are the new responsibilities humans will take on. But yes, so it's a pretty complex topic.
Absolutely. And some will say they won't be needed at all in future, because some would say, to talk about SQ, that AI will attain levels beyond humanity, not only in emotional intelligence, but even the deepest wisdom and even kindness, love that we show. But the jury's out, I think. But yes, I mean, certain job roles, such as being precise about things and structuring information, I mean, these are getting usurped already by AI. So, yeah, if we do think there might be roles for humans as leaders in future, then in what way? What is the leadership toolkit? And there are basically four sort of pathways, which in my research I've found these are the ones which are most likely to endure as AI gets significantly better than it is today. And I use the term of a threshold. I think human leaders are now being invited to cross a threshold where, unless I think leaders adopt this more organic, fluid way of leading, then they'll get left behind. And so there are these four pathways which leaders can take, any or all of them, to and across the threshold. First one is cultivating stillness. So this is about creating spaces where productivity and stillness meet. And all these pathways are about us as humans leveraging what we're best at and what AI will find hardest to replicate. The second pathway is embodying intelligence. So the fact that machines are not made of flesh matters more than many people think. That the wisdom I have in life, such as it is, a lot of it is through mistakes I've made, pain I've suffered, the fact that I grew as a child. The machine hasn't got that experience and that memory. Third pathway is thinking independently. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, today. And the fourth one is about maturing consciousness, becoming even more developmentally mature as adults.
Wow, that's a great sort of a four-part framework. And maybe what we do is we take a couple of those and dive in. You said you want to talk a little bit more about thinking independently. And we've all sort of grown up to know that that is something that's important to do, but it changes. It changes the way we think about it, and it changes the level of focus we need to put on it. Help us think through what's needed there.
Yes, thinking independently is one of the most magnificent things we can do as humans. And unfortunately, our culture, culture of our families, culture of the business world, cuts across independent thinking. In my decades as a coach and business person, it's very rare that I've seen business settings that truly foster independent thinking, where every person is paying magnificent attention to every other person. And we need this more than ever now as AI is accelerating, because so many leaders have outsourced their thinking, or they do subservient thinking or submissive thinking or derivative thinking, when I think what I think you want me to think, Sanjay, because you're my boss and you're responsible for my bonus, and oh, I better think that. So this is the kind of loops we get into. Whereas against that, to give you an example, I worked with a pharmaceutical company that used this approach to supercharge its way of developing vaccines. And increasingly, AI is being used in that area. But this was during the pandemic. And when they really thought deeply about what they wanted, when they thought together independently, they released the profit motive a little, and that allowed them to offer vaccines more widely globally to great effect. And one practical way they did this was when they had meetings, they made sure that there was a roughly equal airtime of all the participants. So the meetings weren't sucked the life out of because one person did 50% of the talking. And they made space for emotions, knowing that emotional release is a part of good thinking. I think unless we do this kind of thing, we're leaving some of our greatness at the door.
And this is interesting you say that. It reminds me of a conversation I recently had with a colleague in the automotive industry. They manufacture actuators for like safety systems, so the kinds of things that would actuate the car. The seat belt or the airbags in your car, as an example. So these are high precision actuators that have to get just right. Obviously, human life at risk here. And so they had a QC, a quality control mechanism, where these things would come on the line, they'd pick it up, they'd look at it, they'd rotate it. They had these trained technicians that'd be doing that. And the idea was how to use AI to actually improve the quality testing, right? And the traditional approach actually didn't yield any results because they tried to apply computer vision and picking it with a robotic arm and putting different bandwidths of light frequencies and inspecting it from different angles. And it still couldn't beat the quality of the human technician looking at it. And then they thought independently, just the point you made. What they did was the new process, they pick the actuator with a robotic arm and they take a musical tone and they hit it at a specified velocity, angle, and speed and force. And so it makes a musical sound. And it turns out that audio footprint is actually a better way to diagnose what the quality of the instrument is. And so it's just an example of practical, the sort of thing that I do in my life and my peers do. But thinking independently is so important because AI is changing fundamentally how we do things. Talk to us about the other one that captured my attention, maturing consciousness. I mean, it sounds a little philosophical, but like in the world of business, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, so often we act like children in an adult world, and that can be good to be childlike, to play. But I mean, I look back over my 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I'd see a trail of discomforts and problems I've caused when I just acted in really quite an immature way. There's an example of one colleague years ago, guy I'll call Josh. He stormed up to my desk and is waving this PowerPoint printout in my face. And he's shouting, "How could you do this?" And the previous day, I'd got some analysis wrong, but worse than that, I'd actually done it in a way that managed to put Josh in a bad light. And so I'm listening to him, I'm sitting there, like sweat is starting to roll down my face and shifting uncomfortably. And part of me knew when I did that analysis, I knew Josh would come off badly. But when he sort of tore into me and said, "Nick, why?" Then I just thought to myself, well, if it hurts, but if it hurts, hide it. So I said, "Well, that was rigorous work." But as I said it, I could sense Josh's anger increase, and it was not a mature way of behaving, and it didn't help us work together to solve the complex problems that we were wanting to solve. And the reason why more of a maturity of accepting the wisdom from others is important is that in the age of AI, we as leaders can expect more regular chaos, more regular paradox, challenges from left field, and the most mature leaders will be at ease with this, even if they feel lost. So, I mean, we can talk about examples, for example, managing ambiguity in AI innovation. So the ones who are more psychologically developed as leaders will excel in adaptability and critical thinking. And there are many use cases where this maturity, which this has been very well studied, I mean, since the 70s in Harvard, where this has come through. So I think that's vital.
I love it. Listen, we need to spend more time on this and we'll come back to do that. But those 2 points are fantastic. We want to hear about the other ones as well soon. Look, I'll just turn to my audience. The rise of generative AI is really redefining the fabric of work, careers, leadership. I go back to my own early days in the world of the internet. It feels like 1997 to me all over again. And so we are actually standing at the precipice of the largest transformation we'll have ever seen. And so for most of the work we do today, we spend 4 years preparing through college and more to get to where we are. And the question is, what got us there? Does it get us ahead? And I don't think the answer to that is yes. And so we've got to be very intentional. We have to be very purposeful. Now, you gave us some great ideas. We want to come back and explore this more. Thank you for sharing. And thank you to my audience for joining today.
Thank you. Well, I've loved your energy in the conversation. Thanks very much.